Live video to our monitors coming now from the White House. Happening right now, President Donald Trump meeting with Syrian President Ahmed Al-Sharaa. This is the first ever visit by a Syrian president to the White House. The men met in May, and in that meeting, decades of sanctions against Syria were lifted by the United States. So what will come out of today's meeting there at the White House? Let's go live where it's happening to CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. So Olivia, you have new details about what's being said in that meeting. What are you hearing?
Reed, it's good to be with you. We can report from a senior administration official that Syria is expected to join the U.S.-led coalition to defeat ISIS. There are about 89 other countries that are part of this coalition, but this marks a major policy shift between the U.S. and Syria. Just to take a step back and give you the scope of this, Ahmed Al-Sharaa, who is the new leader of Syria, the de facto leader of Syria since he toppled the Assad regime earlier this year, was on a U.S. bounty list as of last December for $10 million. And just a year later, now he is in the Oval Office, or at the White House rather, meeting with President Trump. So really just a remarkable assumption into power here, but now a willingness by the United States to work closely with him in defeating ISIS. We know that Syria has been involved in a 14-year civil war, so they are now in the efforts of rebuilding that, and this seems like a first step towards really a normalized relationship between the U.S. and Syria. Another thing that is potentially up for discussion between these two leaders is the efforts to rebuild Syria after that civil war. One estimate that I looked at said it could cost up to $216 billion to rebuild that country after just being absolutely ravaged for the last decade or so in that war. So certainly a notable meeting here today. And just to provide a little bit of color of what this meeting has been like, normally, when you and I talk and there's a foreign leader who arrives here at the White House, you see the flags behind me, there's a large procession, President Trump appears with that leader, shakes their hand, welcomes them into the White House. That's not what happened here today. The Syrian leader came via motorcade, was ushered into the White House away from pool cameras where we could not see, and this bilateral meeting between the two is happening inside, but there are no cameras that we have there as reporters. So we have not seen the two of them pictured together, but still, even though there's a willingness to perhaps keep Ahmed Al-Sharaa at arm's length, they are still willing to work with them and the new Syrian leadership on getting control on ISIS in the region.
Looks like there's at least hands at the end of those arm's length reaches that are shaking there. Okay, so as those headlines develop out of that meeting, we know you'll bring them to us. But I also want to ask you about the headline of President Donald Trump making sweeping pardons today. They are people who stood accused of election interference. What's this story all about?
Well, it's quite interesting. So last night, the Department of Justice pardon attorney Ed Martin actually tweeted out the pardons, the list of pardons that the president allegedly signed on Friday, pardoning people who were part of the effort to overturn the election in 2020. Some of those people include Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, people who worked on Trump's legal team in the efforts to overturn the election back in 2020. Also Mark Meadows, who was once the White House chief of staff during the first Trump administration. But Reed, these pardons are largely symbolic. These are pardons for federal crimes of which none of these individuals have been charged. They have been charged on state levels, and that is where the president does not have the ability or the jurisdiction to issue them pardons. So largely symbolic, but certainly notable that President Trump is still focused on that 2020 election and issuing these pardons as a result.
All right, Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much.